Americans for Prosperity is committed to breaking barriers across the country, and Americans for Prosperity is growing across North Dakota. By calling on lawmakers to reduce taxes, spend less, improve health care, and provide second chances, we can empower all North Dakotans to rise. We're fighting for you. Join us today so we can make North Dakota the best state to live, work, and raise a family. Americans for Prosperity paid for this ad. Bismarck, North Dakota Mayor Steve Bakken joins me now. Steve, how you doing?
Good, Rob. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. I wanted to get you on the line. There's been a national debate, and thanks to President Trump issuing an executive order, there's been a more localized debate about refugee resettlement. Essentially, for those of you maybe who haven't been following along, although I can't imagine who hasn't been, but just, I guess for the uninitiated, refugee resettlement is something that's been happening in the United States of America for a long time. In the past, the way it's been done, and I have objected to this process, is essentially the refugees just kind of show up in the community. A lot of times, at least in our region, I'm not that familiar with how it goes in other parts of the country, but at least in our region, in North Dakota, where by the way, the refugee resettlement happens in Grand Forks County, Cass County, Burleigh County, so mostly Grand Forks, Fargo, and Bismarck. The organization, Lutheran Social Services, that does it, hasn't always been very communicative with local governments regarding the people who are coming in and all of that stuff. A lot of times they're just showing up, and that leaves local schools scrambling. A lot of times these refugee students, they have, English isn't necessarily their first language or not even a language that they speak. A lot of times, there's social services needs. There's just a lot to it. We've had a debate in this state before. We had it in local communities like Fargo. We had it at the legislature about, trying to understand the costs of doing this sort of resettlement. And, that was an ugly debate. There was certainly a faction in the state that didn't even want to understand the cost. They didn't want to talk about that at all. In fact, they thought if you brought it up, you were racist. But now President Trump what he has done is he has issued an executive order, and he's essentially given local governments what amounts to a veto over resettlement. Local governments can say, and even state governments, can say whether or not they want to allow refugee resettlement. Now, to date, as far as I am aware, and I did search again this morning, not a single community nationwide has said no to refugee resettlement. Now, here in our part of the world, in Bismarck, in Burleigh County, the Burleigh County commissioners had a debate. It was a very vigorous debate. They ultimately voted 3-2 late last year to allow resettlement to continue. They put some caveats on it. They capped it at no more than 25 a year, which is about in line with the amount of resettlement that was happening annually anyway. And it's an issue that they're going to revisit annually, and they're going to say yay or nay, I guess every year. If they're going to revisit it annually, I guess they could say no. And they're also going to expect reports from Lutheran Social Services. Now, personally, I like that outcome. I want refugee resettlement to continue, but I just think it could be done in a more cooperative way with the federal government stepping in. Now, Steve, I don't want to misstate your position, but my understanding is you're opposed to ongoing refugee resettlement. Is that right? Can you tell us why?
No, actually I'm not. I'm opposed to not knowing what the financials are for the taxpayers.
Okay.
We're in a scenario right now where we have every political sub in the Bismarck community that raised taxes. Okay, what are the costs on the taxpayers that we're going to have to incur? That's the only question. That was the entire question that was brought up when Burleigh County had their public forum, was show us the numbers. We would like to know. In fact, one of the Burleigh County commissioners, Jerry Woodcox, even stated in the thing, well, we get to vote on this because they do. We do not have a decision as a city. Commissioner Woodcox actually stated in that commission meeting, and then in that forum, that we get to vote on it, but they have to pay for it, meaning us, the city of Bismarck, and the residents of Burleigh County. That's the crux of the issue. It's not about resettlements. What can we afford to do? And that is the point that's getting missed in this. Just because you throw out a question, automatically you're a racist, you're anti-this, you're anti-that. Well, that's the wrong picture being painted by the other side.
I appreciate that. And in fact, what you just described is my position. I want refugee resettlement to continue. I just want to understand the cost. Now, let me ask you this question, though. Did you like the outcome? Because to me, I thought Burleigh County's outcome was the right outcome. They're going to allow it to continue for another year, but at the end of that year, they want a report. Is that not what you're asking for?
Nothing happened. For me, when I make a decision, it comes down to having the right information to make a sound decision for the constituents, for the taxpayers of the community. You need to have all the information you need. In fact, several people have brought that up during the meeting. In fact, some of the pro-refugee folks had brought that up, that you don't have all the information. You don't have, and I quote, or paraphrasing, you don't have the information, so you can't make that decision. That's exactly right. If you don't have all the numbers that you need, if you don't have all the information, how can you make a sound decision for the taxpayers? You can't. Here's the problem that I have, and this goes back to whatever veil is being thrown on it, whether it's Lutheran Social Services, Catholic Family Services, if it's the state, if it's the feds, wherever it's coming from. The problem is there's no transparency. Where are the numbers? We don't know. Okay, let's pass it so we can find out what's in it. I don't think that scenario works well.
So Burleigh County, I mean, they are requiring a report. I mean, that was in the reports that I read on what they ultimately voted on. They are requiring an annual vote. You're saying that's not good enough, or an annual revisiting and an annual report? You're saying that's not good enough?
I'm saying that it is. It's a step in the right direction, but how do you make a decision without having the information you need to make a factual, calculated decision? You can't.
So what would you have liked?
Where are these numbers in the first place, Rob?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a fair question, and I've been asking that for a while. I remember when it was, what was it, a couple years ago, Fargo City Commissioner Dave Pepcorn was asking essentially the same question. Where is the information? Why can't we get the information? At one point, there was an organization, I think it was of a kind of a politically slanted organization, that came out and they said, okay, well, here's the information, but it was all just sort of this glowing, they shop in our communities, they pay sales taxes, they do all this other stuff, which I don't think anybody's disputing, but you can't just tell that side of the story. So I agree with you. What would you have liked? I mean, did you support the Burleigh County vote? I mean, were you happy with that outcome?
No, I wasn't, because
okay.
I wanted the information.
Sure. Okay. So
then make a decision until you have the information.
Okay.
Get us the information. And now, I say us, but we don't have a say in it as the city of Bismarck. Now, we're going to have the bulk of whom is settled. We've got a great refugee population right now. We've got a wonderful, vibrant community within our community. But we'd like to know what else is coming, because when we're raising taxes and we're trying to balance budgets and we don't know what that unintended consequences of those costs are, how do you do a budget? How do you plan for something ahead? We all know how to plan. We all know how to make a savings account. We all know how to make fiscal decisions in our own household. But we're not given that ability to do such without giving us the information that we need from a financial perspective. Am I supposed to go to the taxpayers and go, hey, we had 500 refugees come into the community, so we have this much extra strain on our social programs and the school district and everything else, and then tell the taxpayer that, well, your taxes are going up, but it's all good. Well, why didn't you plan for that? Well, we didn't have the information to plan for that. There's too much vaguity, and there needs to be transparency in the entire process, Rob.
Well, I agree with you. Let me ask you this question. What would you have liked to have seen, Burleigh, instead of what they did, what outcome were you hoping for from Burleigh County?
I would have liked to have seen more information. It's not a question of Burleigh County. The outcome I would like to have seen from Burleigh County was more a question of the outcome I would like to have seen from the federal government, Lutheran Social Services. If you're West River, then that falls on Catholic Family Services in western North Dakota. But give us some of those numbers of what the incidental costs are. What are the unintended consequences? You brought up the ESL. We're looking at a little over $30 million a year in the state of North Dakota for English as a second language learning. Granted, that's not all refugee status, but if you're going to add another 5,000, 10,000 in the population of North Dakota, and what's the percentage that is going to require that extra level of education? Well, that's not all coming from the state. That's not coming from the federal government. That's coming from local taxpayers. who are supporting the local school districts. So how do we build budgets? How do we plan to do what's in the best interest for our local taxpayers if we don't have all those numbers? For me, it's just entirely too vague. So you asked what I'd like to have seen come out of that. I would like to have seen it tabled until we can get the information, or Burleigh County commissioners could have got the information that they needed to make a sound, intelligent decision off the facts.
Is there's an effort afoot, I guess, to put this question on the ballot in some way, and it's a little unusual because what I'm hearing them talk about is something that's not even really binding. It's more almost like a sort of public opinion survey, but they're going to put it on the official state ballot. And I think they're working with the Secretary of State's office to see. I've never heard of that being done before, but I guess they're working with it to see. Is that an effort you support? Is putting this question on the ballot?
So Burleigh County Commission is they're meeting tonight, and it's a citizen-initiated request to put it on a ballot, put it on a vote. You know, one of the big things that came out of this and leading up to it was we don't know the numbers either. You talk about the financials, and then you talk about, well, what can we afford to absorb within a community? Nobody in that room when they had the public forum, to my knowledge, was against refugees and resettlement, people coming and wanting to be Americans and building a better life for themselves. Nobody was against that. But what can we afford? You know, how do you go to the well over and over and over again and putting things on the backs of taxpayers? Eventually, you're going to break them. You're going to break that back.
First of all, there are some people who are just out. I mean, you have to have seen some of the Facebook messages, some of the public statements from people. I mean, they really don't want refugees to come here. I don't think that they're the majority. I don't think that they speak for you or for anybody else but other than themselves. But there are some people that just don't want refugees here, right?
Sure, and it's a minority.
Sure,
I feel that it's a minority.
Do you feel like I'm a little just in terms of process? I mean, even just setting the refugee question aside, I don't understand why this should be put on the ballot. And the reason why is we already have a mechanism. If you don't like the outcome that the Burleigh County Commission produced, then elect different commissioners. They're going to be on the ballot. They're going to be accountable. You know, if we start putting all these questions just on a ballot directly to the people, why do we even have county commissioners? I mean, why not? Why it seems to me like you're almost letting the commissioners off the hook by allowing them to put the question on the ballot.
You know, I'll agree with that to a certain extent. You know, there's some things that, as elected officials, we're tasked with operations and having a vision and how you build a community with a budget and everything else that goes in with that, how you do economic development. And that's what you elect people on. There are some things that come up that people would consider life-altering within a community that, you know, I don't feel comfortable making a decision of that nature for that group. You know, when you're looking at life-altering things, say in Bismarck we have some flooding issues or things that are going to vastly change the landscape of our community. There needs to be more input than just 5 people on a commission.
They heard from their constituents, though, and they were elected by their constituents. I mean, at what point we elect people like you and like the Burleigh County commissioners and all the other people we elect you to lead. We elect you to make those tough questions, those tough calls, those tough decisions.
Absolutely. And I agree with that. And we are elected to lead. But there are some things that I don't know. I have a hard time sometimes with leaving things in the hands of 5 people that were elected that are life-altering decisions.
Yeah. And
whether or not you want to consider refugee resettlement into a community as a life-altering, I don't. But if you want to,
well, I was going to say, because again, we're talking about a couple of dozen resettlements a year in Burleigh County, the population of which I don't live in Burleigh County. You could probably tell me is what, 80, 90,000?
That's what the past has been.
Right.
One of the things that was raised up in leading up to the county's discussion of this was, what are the numbers? Because there's no strings attached. Hey, is it 5? Is it 500? Is it 5,000? Nobody knows.
And what are the criteria? I mean, who's making the decision? Who's making the decision saying the resources this community has can support this number? How are they even making that decision? Is there like a formula? Is there, I guess I don't know.
No. And in my discussions with the commissioners, that's information that was not provided with them, with Burleigh County Commission. Commissioner Bittner, who was the chair of the Burleigh County Commission, he sat in on the federal conversations, the phone calls. There was conference calls for Burleigh County chairman or different county chair people. None of that information was conveyed.
You want refugee resettlement, right? I mean, just all other things being equal, you want them to come here to our country. Is that right? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
If people need to get out of a situation that they're put in that drastically affects their lives, that could cause them death, could cause them severe injury, could cause them severe damage, and they want to come to America and want to be an American citizen and want to contribute into the culture, then absolutely, by all means.
Do you because I very much believe in that. I harken back to Ronald Reagan, who was president during my childhood. I found him to be a very inspiring leader. And, one thing, he always talked about the United States of America as being the shining city on the hill. And that just, it's in my writing a lot. That image has stuck with me throughout my entire life. I want America to be the sort of a place that people aspire to come to, a refugee. I like that. I like that idea where people from other parts of the world that aren't so good can come here and find prosperity and happiness the same way my ancestors did when they left Scandinavia and Germany. I want that. And I worry. I mean, there are people, and I think a certain amount of this, I don't think is very fair, but there are people who say, if Burleigh County says no to refugee resettlement, that it's going to make North Dakota look like an unwelcoming or intolerant place. What do you say to people who make that argument?
I say absolutely not. That is not the case at all. One of the things is we're supposed to be that shining beacon on the hill and attract the best, the brightest, the downtrodden, those that are looking at improving their lot in life. That's what America's about. That is what America is supposed to be about, is how do you make a better life? You know what? You take a look through the educational process and take a look at who comes to this country to become doctors and attorneys and engineers and physicists. And then you take a look at the people that come here because they have nowhere else to turn, but we're that shining example. That's what America's supposed to be about. But come here, improve your lot in life. If you have an opportunity to go improve where you came from's lot in life, whether it's from the education system or not, then feel free to go do that. If you stay here, and then improve the American lot in life. We are the great melting pot, by all means, Rob, but that puts us in an opportunity to lead and be that shining city on the hill and attract the best and brightest and attract those that need that extra hand up. That's what this country's about.
Last question for you, Steve. If you're king for the day, and this settling this issue for Burleigh County, for your community, you're mayor of Bismarck, Burleigh County, settling this issue for your community is just completely up to you. How do you structure this? How do you do this, working with the federal government, allowing refugees to continue, but doing it on terms that you find acceptable?
Give me the information that I need to make an informed, intelligent decision for the benefit of those who already live here.
And what information are you looking for specifically? How would you want it delivered? Like annual reports?
We need tracking of what the cost is, because at the end of the day, what my responsibility is to the taxpayers of my community that I was elected to take care of the financials. You got to remember, when we're dealing with government money, it's not our money. It belongs to the taxpayers, and we can't overburden the taxpayers. I need the numbers on what the financials are. I need the numbers on what the unintended financials are. I need the numbers on what we're able to absorb within a community, because we can't build a budget to be able to do that without all that information.
Did Burleigh County, I guess I didn't drill down far enough, when Burleigh County, because essentially what the decision that stands now is they want an annual report. Did they put any criteria for what's going to be in that report? Is it the sort of things that you're talking about?
As far as what they were looking at, I guess I never read into it that much that there was some specifics. I do know that that 25 number that was attached to that for Burleigh County wasn't in their purvey. You know, they stuck that number on there. They pulled the number out of the air, which is a bad number. You know, can we support 25 people in the community? Can we support 15? Can we support 75?
I got the feeling that it was essentially they were kind of capping it at what was the historical norm for resettlement for that area.
But that also wasn't something that was in their purvey. That wasn't in their ability to do in a motion. It was all or nothing.
I was surprised that they did that. I realized that the Trump administration, we're kind of in uncharted territory. The Trump administration gave them a veto, gave all the local governments across the nation a veto. I didn't know, are they allowed to put conditions on it? I guess I don't know.
No, they're not. And that's the other problem. It was all or nothing.
Yeah.
So by nothing meant nothing. By all meant there's no number. You're going to take as much as you get sent, which from a financial perspective, we know that doesn't work. What can we do as a community to support those that do come here to be successful? I guess the question is like if Burleigh County says 25 is what we're comfortable with, and they bring in 70 next year, can Burleigh County can then just say, okay, well, we're going to exercise our veto then, and we're going to say no more resettlement. Yeah, good luck. Yeah. I mean, you're not allowed to cap that number. There's no provision in there. Tell you what, if there was a number that said you're going to take 46 refugees next year, or you have the ability as a county to limit what that number is, to have some say into that number, this discussion never would have been taking place. Well, I think wasn't that what President Trump was trying to give them, though? It was, but for some strange reason, we have an unintended consequence of all or nothing. Yeah. Well, I don't know that it's all or nothing, because as long as they can, I feel like as long as they can exercise the veto, they can have reasons why they're exercising the veto. And if they can exercise the veto in the future, they can exercise it because, hey, we said 25 and you guys did 70 or whatever the number is. And I like the idea of a community sort of deciding for itself, hey, this is what we think we can take in. We want to take some in, but it can't be some undefined number. It has to be a relatively defined number, and we've got to understand what that is. I mean, I'm in favor of that. I mean, really, this is why I supported so much what President Trump is doing, allowing these communities to ask. And I hope a future president doesn't overturn his executive order. But I very much like that local communities have input in this. I think that this is a very healthy process where communities like Burleigh County can have a debate saying, how many can we allow in? What do we have the resources for? What can we support? Also to make sure that we're doing a good job for refugees, because if they send more refugees to Burleigh County than Burleigh County can really support, you're not really doing those refugees any favors either, frankly. Yeah, and that's what it's about, Rob. And at the end of the day, it's how can you help somebody better their lot in life? And that includes those who are already residents of Burleigh County and those who are going to be residents of Burleigh County, because if we're not putting people in a position to succeed, then everybody fails. Okay, explain to me where that's a good scenario. Yeah. Well, Steve, and if you ask the questions, Rob, ask a number, ask a simple question, ask for more information, then there's a large segment, or at least a very vocal small segment, that paints you as a racist. Yeah. I think allowing refugee resettlement, I think it's the will of the people. And again, I think it's telling, the fact that President Trump gave local communities this option where they can say no, and not a single community in the United States has said no yet. I think that's a great thing. We've all been we've always been about your huddled
Sure.
masses.
Right. So I think there is a thing where locals want some local control over that flow in, and I don't think that's an unreasonable thing, and I think President Trump gave it to him. Steve, about 5 questions ago, I told you last question, so I better let you go. I appreciate you so much for making the time for me today, and maybe we'll check in again after the vote happens.
Anytime, my friend.
Thank you.